You're listening to the number one podcast for oil and gas professionals. What's up? Mike Fry, I'm here with Dallas Bozeman.
Hey, what's happening?
What's happening, D?
Another day.
Yeah, it is another day. We want to welcome you to another episode of the Deepwater Subsea Podcast. So what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to talk about motivation. And what we were discussing was that the worst motivator there is, especially in business, is money.
Especially in today's market.
And the problem is, I think it's just a definition. Money was created to support people. Money was designed for an avenue for people to meet their needs. But unfortunately, it's gone from a way to meet needs to a measure of success. So now people have allowed money to define them. Also, they've allowed it to define their worth and what they think they're worth. And we've been looking and seeing a lot of things, especially coming across LinkedIn and social media, about the job market and about what employees are paying now, especially in oil and gas. And the issue is people are basing their value off of prices, rig rates that were occurring 2 and 3 years ago. We're not in that same market anymore. So now legitimate job offers are starting to flow again. You know, tenders are being established, contracts are coming across. People are starting to hire, but because the day rates on the rigs are so much lower, so are the rates that the people are going to be paid for the work they're doing. So people are getting offers. And one, for instance, that we saw was someone who was offered $30 an hour. And they were like, that's criminal. I shouldn't have. It was as if they were insulted that they were even offered that money because they felt like they were so much more. And what it goes back to is, one, you can't allow money to measure your success, but you also have to understand the market you're in. You know, a rig rate of $750,000 3 years ago might be a couple $100,000 now, and your pay is going to reflect that. So what we wanted to talk about today a little bit was, what is really the motivation behind what you do, and what are those issues that arise when we make money the number one priority?
No, I agree. And I think, and you're better at remembering quotes than I am. There was a quote that basically said, you know, it's not about what you think you're worth. It's about what someone else thinks you're worth is where your value is. And you see it a lot with pro athletes. It's like, oh, I want the big contract and I deserve this and I deserve that. And it's like, hey, look, your production doesn't match what you think your value is. And unfortunately, you know, you mentioned the rig rates. So many times over the last 2 years, you know, guys have lost their jobs, and it's horrible. I mean, I can empathize with them, and you know, every day is a battle, and especially in the oil and gas market. But the opportunity when you were at 650 and guys are making $250,000, $300,000 a day, or a day, yeah, $300,000 a year, life was good. Speedboats, fast cars, you know, new houses, trips, to everything. And then all of a sudden the market took a dump and hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs. Just like with the drilling contractors, the market, like we were talking about offline, the market reset itself. And now rigs that were going for 650 are going for $150. Guys who are making, you know, $300,000 a year are getting job offers for $100,000 a year. I know a lot of guys I know people who are complaining about that 100, but I know people who are making 0 who would love to have 100. And it comes back to, what is your motivation, like you mentioned?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And for you guys listening, don't think that, you know, we're sitting on a soapbox here, because I know a lot of you are probably listening and going, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, you know, sitting up in your ivory tower making good money. We're still guys that have been affected by the industry.
There's many times where I haven't taken a paycheck.
That's right.
To be able to support the company and to be able to support our employees. So, yeah, this isn't about us trying to say that things on our side of the fence are any greener. We have a great opportunity and we hustle every day, but our friends, our coworkers, Dallas, for an example, before we got started together, we've been there and we've had these battles.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so just to share a little bit of where I'm coming from on this whole thing about job satisfaction and money is, you know, I worked at a company prior to coming on to Deepwater Subsea and made really good money there. But I didn't see the fruit of my labor. You know, it was a job that was worked. Companies made more money because of the work I did. But for me, I never wanted my work to be about a bottom line. I never wanted it to be about a dollar. Coming and working here at Deepwater Subsea, the reason I've enjoyed my time here so much is because of things like this, where we're putting out podcasts to try to encourage people and to build them up and to give them tools to become more successful. And then we're putting on leadership classes and we're reaching out to college students. We're reaching out to veterans. Like that's what I place my value in. I place my value in who I can serve and how I can serve them. And whenever you allow something like that to be your motivating factor as opposed to money, it changes things drastically because a lot of people look at money as a way of making their job more tolerable. And even though it may make your work more tolerable, it can make you an intolerable person to work with because you may absolutely hate what you're doing. You may be okay with it because of the money you're making and it makes it tolerable. But if you're not satisfied in what you do and you're not motivated by what you do, you're not going to be a good leader or a good boss or a good frontline supervisor because you don't have the drive or the motivation to improve the lives of the people you work with or the lives of the people around you or anything more significant than those greenbacks coming across, your bank account every couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it's crazy too. I mean, when you really think about it, if you're online every day searching for that next job, how much are you really putting out to your current position or current employer? Because your commitment to the excellence of that organization is zero. I mean, there's the old saying, there's no I in team, but there is a me. There is, but there's a bigger picture. I mean, to kind of restart your career and just be happy where you're at. I mean, we talk here, Dallas and myself too. I mean, Dallas has been with us, what, about a year and a half now, year and
Yeah, going on 18 months. Yeah.
yep. And so Dallas is getting ready to transition into a new opportunity. And the thing is when Dallas came on board, I said, look, I want you to be so much more than a performance manager. We started doing the podcast, we do the videos. He's instructing. He's now an international speaker. It's about doing the things that you love and giving people the opportunity to become, everything that they've ever wanted to be. Now Dallas takes those tools and he moves on to the next opportunity. His transfer was never about money. It's about furthering the things that he loves to do. And I think that it gets lost. I've always said to people, if you're working with me, if you're working on the same team, if you're an employee, if you're leaving to go somewhere else and you're going to take an advancement in your career, then I support you 100%. But if you're quitting to go down the street for $1, $5, $5,000, just stay, just go away and I'm done. Just a real quick story and I'll turn it back over to you, Deep. I had a person that we were looking to bring on here at Deepwater Subsea. I said, here's the offer. Here's what the package looks like. He says, if you give me $50 more a day, I'll pull over and sign the job offer right now. And I said, dude, just keep driving. I said, $50 a day. You're really going to haggle me over $5,000 a year. I said, we've already said that this is the best offer. Is it you're worried about money, that extra $5,000, or you're worried for the opportunity for growth? You're not working today. So it's very easy to want to be greedy, and I can appreciate wanting to maximize your opportunity. But if you're working zero, I could offer you $10,000 a day and it's still zero. So, I mean, you really have to focus on what's important to you at the end of the day. And sometimes just getting back to work is really where you need to start.
Yeah. And I've been completely guilty of this. Whenever I left the military, I came out and I started working as an offshore consultant. And the money was really good at the time. I mean, we're talking early 2014. So I started working as an offshore consultant. But the whole reason I left the military was because my time away from home, 6-8 months a year, constantly being gone. I was missing my kids growing up. It was really stressful in the house. It was hard on my family. It was hard on my wife. So I said, you know what? I've been gone enough. I really want to get out, find something that's going to allow me to spend more time with them, to be more intentional in their lives. And then whenever I got out, I took a position working offshore. So that meant another 6 to 8 months a year offshore, still gone. And even though the work wasn't as dangerous as what I was doing before, it didn't alleviate the stress in the home. It didn't allow me to spend that much more time with my kids. My off days were my off days, yes. And that was definitely a plus. But when you're out of the house for more than 10 to 14 days, the dynamics shift.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, now you're not really playing a part anymore. And whenever you come back, everybody has to adjust to you being there. And about the time they adjust, you leave again and they readjust. And it created a whole, really stressful atmosphere in the home alone. So after about, a year and a half of doing that, I had the opportunity to sit down. And I said, man, like, what am I doing? I got so wrapped up in chasing the dollar that I walked away from what was really important to me in the first place, which was trying to spend more time with the kids and trying to be more intentional in my marriage and with my children. So I'm completely guilty of doing this same thing. But even in today's market, if money is our single greatest factor and the thing that we find the most satisfaction in our jobs, it leaves you like like we've heard before, it leaves you like a reed blowing in the wind, right? Every time the winds change, every time something shifts, every time you see a few more dollars over here, you go, oh, that looks pretty good, I'm going to start wandering that way. And then you get there and maybe you do a year, maybe you do 18 months, and then somebody else comes along and maybe you're not advancing in your career, but they're going to pay you a little bit more money. You go, oh, that looks pretty good over there too. So then you lose you lose a lot of loyalty within the company. There is no loyalty there. You're just constantly chasing the dollar. But over time, eventually, people are going to look at a resume and they're going to go, okay, this guy's kind of risky because he doesn't spend more than 12 to 18 months at any position before he moves on. So maybe it's a short term win, but overall, it could be a long term loss.
I know, definitely, especially as a business owner, when resumes come across my desk, that's the first thing that, and I hate to say it this way because it's almost stereotyping, but it's the first thing that I think about is you're changing every 2 years. What's changed? Now in this market, it's a little different. It's like, hey, I took this temp
Right.
position, I did this, I
Right.
did this. But if over the last 10, 15 years you got, 10 jobs, something tells me either there's some dynamic that's not working. Either you're chasing the dollar or you're having conflict within the organizations. I saw a resume that came through a couple weeks ago, and individual and I sat down and talked, and he just had bad luck. And what I mean by that was went to work for a company, company went bankrupt. Went to work for another company, company closed the division. Went to work for another company, that company was bought out. It was like he just kept ending up at the wrong place. Great worker, great qualifications, but if you just looked at the black and white text of a resume, it looked like he was a jumper. He had enough qualifications though, where I was like, let me bring this guy in and see what's going on. But there are others who will just straight up tell you. I used to ask people all the time, like, what is it about Subsea that interests you? The money. All right, who's next? Because, like you said, the money cannot be your motivator at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And one thing that we pitched a lot to the college students that come through here and the veterans that are in transition, and something that a question I try to ask them while they're searching out what their next opportunity is going to be and where they're going to go. I say, well, here's two things that I really want you to look at, and that's one, what are you really passionate about doing? Like, what sets a fire inside of you? What could you do every day, even if you didn't get paid to do it? And then number two, who are the people that you're passionate about? Who are the people that you desire to serve? And then if you can find a way to marry those two where you can monetize serving those people, then you found something, because it's not about money anymore. Now it's about the fruit of your labor. It's about producing something, seeing results on the backside that satisfy, your ego, not your personal ego, like your self-worth, but your value and what you're actually contributing to society. If you can get that wrapped up where you found something that, one, you're really passionate about doing, and two, you're serving people as opposed to just a bottom line dollar, now you've got some momentum. Now you're going to be able to lock in somewhere where you're going to feel stable, you're going to feel safe, you're going to feel like a contributor, and you're going to spend probably several years within that company growing because you're actually passionate about what you do, as opposed to somebody who has found something that they can tolerate doing and they just kind of continue to do that until they have an opportunity for advancement and pay.
Yeah, I mean, you see it a lot of times where it's like, "Hey, I want you to go to training." Well, am I going to get paid? It's like, dude, you're getting an education, right? You're getting professional development training, but you very quickly see who's there as, we'll call it, who's there for a job and who's there for their career. If you're just there for the paycheck, then you're going to be the one that bickers and like, oh, I want to get paid. I should get training pay, and it's away from my time off. And it's like, I remember when I was working at the drilling contractor, guys would be screaming mad about having to go to training. And it's like, well, I'll go to this training next time I'm off. It's like you do realize you get 6 months of vacation a year, right? You're going to lose a week. You're still getting almost 5.5 months worth of vacation. Now, yes, you work 5.5, 6 months, but it came down to I'd watch guys refuse to go to training unless they were getting pay. And organizations would say, some won't even pay you. It's like it's part of your duties. It's part of your job that you have to come for training. And then it was just always such a mess. And so I'm always surprised that people who want to get training and they'll say, oh, I want, my organization doesn't give me professional development training. And then they go, okay, cool. Here's a class that you can take. Well, am I going to get paid for it? It's like, well, do you want the training or do you want to get paid? It's like, well, I want both. Again, what's your motivation? For me, if an organization was paying for me to go get the training that I wanted to help advance my career, the the money was nothing. I was more happy that I was getting the training at the end of the day.
Yeah, and education is that's a really good point as far as education because there's a lot of people that are considering maybe going back to school, but their motivation for going back to school is, well, if I get this degree, I can make more money. I'll be more marketable. And that's not entirely wrong, but you need to be really looking at school as, hey, can I serve more people by getting this education? Can it affect my ability to contribute? Because whenever I think back to my schooling coming into the military, my job was to disarm improvised explosive devices. I was passionate about learning in school because every bit of knowledge I gained made me that much safer. Every bit of learning that I got increased my opportunities to go home at the end of the day. So the more I knew, the safer I was, the safer I was able to keep my guys, and the more people I was going to be able to bring home at the end of the day. That was my drive to go to school. That was my drive to excel. If somebody came and said, hey, if you go to these schools, you're going to make a few more dollars, it probably wouldn't have had the same impact.
Yeah, for me myself, I had a friend that works at an oil company, and she's in HR, and she said it's a good point that you brought up. She said you really should go get a degree, and I said to her, I said, well, why would I want to do that? Because there's no financial reward for me. The difference was though is I understood about professional development, and what I mean is I might not need an MBA or a degree in this or degree in that, but there are courses that I can take to help me fill the gaps that I have in some development areas. So I think it's important to kind of look at both sides of it. Yeah, I was one saying, hey, going out and get a bachelor's degree as a CEO of a company, there's really no value to me. But where there is value to me is if I went for this and I went for this and just basic. I could take a week long class here. So there's some adult ed stuff, and there's value to me in my day to day world. But that piece of paper on the wall adds no value really, with the exception of something on a business card.
Yeah,
Some
yeah, and you see this a lot in our our early college years and some of those university settings with the way society's placed its value into the undergraduate and graduate programs, where it's almost to the point now that technical schools are frowned upon. Now, there's nothing wrong with technical schools. Those are people they're our mechanics. They're the ones who keep our air conditioners running. They're the ones who keep your cars on the road. Those people fill real needs in society. And if that's what they love to do and that's what they're passionate about doing, then why wouldn't you want them to go get an education to learn those applied skills rather than going to a university to learn, theoretical concepts that can be applied broadly because society's told them that if they want to be successful and they want to make money, that's what they have to do. It should never be frowned upon by any means. You should be seeking an education in something that you're passionate about and something that you want to do for the rest of your life, not what society says you need to be doing in order to be successful, because then you're finding validation in what they think about you as opposed to what you're actually created to do.
And it's funny, you see a lot of people who have mechanical skills who, especially in oil and gas, end up being multi millionaires just because they had the vision, they had the know-how of operating the equipment, and then they just went out and did it. I watch a show called West Texas Investors Club. One of the guys on the shows, he bought a patent. I forget the number. He sold it for like $100 million or whatever. He didn't finish like the seventh grade, but he was a machinist, and he learned the trade. His dad was in oil and gas, and next thing you know, he's filthy rich. And it just really comes down to that. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, I can drive a car and I can take it to a shop and someone plugs it in instead of a mechanic having to go through and try to troubleshoot it. I'm great with that. Make it nice and quick. I get an email every month from my car that says, "Hey, here's the current status of it." But there's still a trade. There's still a trained technician that has to put in the work. And I'm a firm believer, especially in oil and gas, where we talk about hands-free operations. You will always have skills that have to put their hands on it. Subsea, for example, you will always have to touch the equipment. Guys in the engine room, mechanics, you're always going to touch the equipment. So it just really comes down to what's the future. When my oldest son was getting ready to look at college, he wanted to go to school for something that would make a lot of money. And it was interesting because he goes and gets his degree. He works at a high school, a private high school. He's a coach of multiple sports teams, and he loves what he does. He makes probably a quarter of what he used to dream about wanting to make, and he's probably 10 times happier than he would have been if he held out for that. I want to drive a Bentley. Hey, you can drive a Bentley, but you have to work for it.
A really interesting study that I saw the other day was this institution went and they started tracking valedictorians in high school to
I
see,
saw that, yeah.
yeah, to see what their success was going to be in life. And they followed them through school, and most of them went on to get graduate degrees and some doctorates. So they were even really successful through their college years. But when it came to applied business and success in life later on, they weren't any more successful than their peers. And what the study found was that those people who achieved academic success tended to be followers. So the school education systems and those institutions, because of the way they require you to conform, since they are followers, they thrived in that. But the people who have found the most success in business were the ones who weren't exactly the most academically inclined. They were just more creative, more at ease with taking risk, and they were entrepreneurs. They wanted to go out. They wanted to try new things. So, unfortunately, we've allowed ourselves to believe that academic success is going to lead to success with money, which is going to lead to a happy life. And those are all completely false. Academic success may be a means to get you into something that you're passionate about. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing and you're not creative and you're not moving forward, then you're still never going to be successful, regardless of how well you've done along the way.
So let's say money is your motivator, right? That's one of the things we talked about, is having money not be your motivator. What could someone do who's listening to this, or is it just something that's basically ingrained into an individual? I mean, are you going to wake up one day and go, you know what, money's really not all that it's meant to be? Or are you always going to have that, hell, I'd love to make more money. I'd love to be a $100 million organization. It doesn't stop me from hustling every morning. What I realize though is my hustle is about providing and supporting my employees. Because as you've heard me say many times, I feel the weight of your guys' mortgage sitting on my shoulders, just like I feel the weight of mine. Because if I'm not hustling, then the organization isn't being successful. But if someone's out there listening and they're one of these guys who are sitting at home going, you know what, the hell with this, I'm not going to work for $40 an hour when I used to make $140 an hour. What advice would you have at any level for someone like that?
For someone like that, man, I guess my only advice would be strip off the pride. Like, figure out really at a heart level, what's your motivation? Because if you're unwilling to stay take a small step back to one, provide for your family, or to continue doing a job you love, then you need to really check what your motives are in the first place. One thing that we talk about in our advanced leadership course is something that we call a strategic downshift. And that's where you're heading up one path, and maybe you're getting increases in pay and you're being promoted, but you're not really satisfied with what you're doing. Maybe a strategic downshift is taking a lower paid position, but in alignment with something that, one, you're passionate about doing, you really want to do, but maybe there's more opportunities for success over there. So somebody will, maybe they're in a supervisory role, maybe they would step down into a frontline supervisor role in a different pathway, whether it's going from, operations into maintenance or maintenance into operations, whichever way they're going. They take a step down to get in alignment with something where there's more opportunities for growth, or it's more in alignment with what they're passionate about doing. So I would say look at where you're headed and what your opportunities are. And if you're looking where you are and you're saying, you know what, they're not paying me what I want to be paid, I don't see an opportunity for any real growth occurring right here. Maybe you downshift. You take a lower paying position in alignment with something else, and you use those skills to go up a different track. You really got to start broadening right now. You need to be looking out, seeing where you can use your skill sets to have impact and still find fulfillment and still find joy in what you do. Because if you allow yourself to get locked into, this is who I am, this is all I've ever been, this is all I'll ever be, then that's exactly what you're going to get. That is all you're going to be. That's all you're ever going to become. And you're constantly going to be on this hamster wheel that you're not going to be able to get off of.
And so you do it a lot nicer than I am. For me, I always just put it just the way it is. I mean, it's like, how hungry are you? You know, if you're used to making 150 and now you're making zero, 30 or 40 looks pretty good. It's very easy to stomp your feet and draw that line in the sand and say, you know what, there was an episode of the $1 Billion Buyer. We watched it here one day, kind of talking about this whole motivation thing. And there was a guy whose shop was getting ready to close. And this is about Tillman Fertitta, and he's the owner of, Landry's and like, all these different food chains. He's a billionaire. And he finds this artist in Louisiana who makes these kind of, it's like glass, murals, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, sculpture, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, amazing pieces of work, but they sell for like $250,000. And Tillman was like, "Well, how many have you sold?" And he's like, "Well, just one." And Tillman says, "Okay, well, you're getting ready to run out of money, right? Your shop's gonna have to close, and you have all these pieces of art sitting around." And he's like, "Why don't you just lower the cost of them and just move some inventory? Let's get it out there." And the guy's thing was, if I do that, it devalues my work as an artist. And Tillman kind of sat back and he's like, "You do realize you're making zero, right? You have no value because nobody knows who you are." And the same thing happens. I mean, it's like you're used to 150, now you're making zero. Hell, you could be used to 500, now you're making zero. Anything is better than zero. And it's easy to say, but it really comes down to how hungry are you, and just putting that pride behind you and going, you know what, maybe I got to start back at 30 to get to 50, to get to 80, to get to 100. The market's going to come back. And hell, maybe it's not oil and gas. Maybe you go somewhere else and get into manufacturing or go do something. But it's too easy to sit at home and complain. There was a thing on the news the other day, a guy who was panhandling here down the street from us, literally like a mile down the street from us. And it got all over social media, and then the news came out, and the guy's like, "Hey, look, I'm down on my luck, and I'm trying to save money I'm homeless, trying to save money to fix my pressure washer, and that's what I'm out here hustling for, right?" And it was funny because someone sent me a message and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I've seen the guy, right?" And he sits in a wheelchair. I mean, he's a big guy. He's heavy. I think he says like 500 pounds, but he sits in a wheelchair, which kind of plays to the, hey, I have disabilities and this type of stuff. But the problem is, even if you went and bought a new pressure washer, does it change the situation, or is it just kind of, woe is me, this is my situation? Like, here's a brand new pressure washer. This is what you're saving for. Now you don't have to do this. Or is it just, thanks, but I want to just keep feeling kind of sorry for myself? And I'm not saying it in a negative way, but there has to be a point in time where you wake up and you just go, the hell with this. I'll do whatever it takes to put food on the table. And if it's $5, if it's $50, it's more than what I had yesterday.
Yeah, and going back to your analogy for the guy who was trying to push his art, right? In this market, you need to see yourself as that piece of art. If you're not out there, if you're not exposed, then nobody knows who you are. You don't have any worth. You don't have any value. You can say, "Hey, I'm worth $250,000." But if nobody's buying, then you're not worth anything. But if you lower down and say, "This is what they're willing to pay. This is what they're willing to give me for my time," at least you're back out in the market. People are putting eyes on you. They know who you are. They're seeing your contributions. So you have an opportunity for advancement as opposed to having zero opportunity for advancement, sitting on your couch waiting for somebody to pay you what you think you're worth.
Yeah. And if you remember our discussions with Matt with the core group, I mean, that's one of the things he said. Hey, look, if you're out there and you're putting in work, even if it's not doing what you normally do, that goes a long way to show that you're someone who's out there willing to hustle and do whatever it takes.
That's exactly right.
Cool. Well, as always, we're grateful for your time, for listening to Dallas and myself. We got a new project that we're working on that we're really excited about. Um, Hell, let's just do this, Dallas. Tell a little bit about what we're getting ready to do.
Yeah. So we looked at, like we have been for the past year, we've really settled in, and this whole podcast has been about giving back. It's been about helping people to grow and helping them to make wise decisions, whether it's in their business or in their personal lives. So me and Mike sat down and we were talking and we said, "Hey, why don't we actually turn this into a book? We'll make an audio book that somebody can load up, listen to it, on their drive, whatever they're doing. But let's put all these nuggets of information, all these lessons learned that we've had in the industry and before we even got into oil and gas. Let's really collate all these things and push it out to an audience that's going to benefit from it." So, we're looking at people, we're looking at students coming out of college, we're looking at young professionals, we're looking at frontline supervisors. And what we want to do is we want to give them tangible skills and things to think about that are going to make them more successful in their life and more successful in business. So, I mean, some of the topics we're talking about is like this one, for instance, money being a bad motivator. You have to find something that you're more passionate about, find some more purpose in life. We're also going to be talking about human factors. What does leadership look like? How do you manage mistakes within your business and within your teams? How do you develop good habits? So we're going to start putting those things together. We're going to make some audio files, make an audio book, maybe get this thing typed up at some point and get it pushed out. But this is all, again, is about giving back and helping people to grow.
Yeah, and I think the good thing about it too, and this is kind of where it kicked off as well, is Dallas and I sit around and tell a lot of military stories to each other, like, oh, back when I was on the boat, this happened. Our training, we did this, and Dallas is like, hey, I had this situation when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's like we just sat around and I was like, why don't we just take the topics, talk about the stories that we have that relates to them. So many times today in business and books and movies, it's all about this gung ho alpha male. Let's storm the castle all by myself against 1,000. And realistically, that's not what happens in the real world. In the real world, you graduate high school and you either go to college or you join the military, and you have aspirations to be something much greater than you are. And what Dallas and I want to do is put these stories together in something that you can listen to on your drive, listen to while you're at the house, and just find that message that you might be missing for that day. And we're really excited about it. Look for it in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be putting it together. We're working on a title at the moment that I think is going to be really cool because it's going to fit a lot of what we talk about. So, yeah, look for it. We're excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, D. Well, I appreciate your time as always, and let's go get busy.
All right, sounds good.